always on that camera. I set it on the other camera at the start of the stream, and it always starts with the stupid work camera. What am I doing wrong here, this little doohickey thing? I don't know. But anyway, now that I'm done complaining about my camera setup and adjusting my microphone a bit more, welcome to this live stream of painting Kairos Fateweaver. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop BattleField, the original video podcast all about tabletop wargaming. And right here is the miniature that I'm going to be working on tonight. Of course, this is Kairos Fateweaver, the relatively new Greater Demon miniature from Games Workshop's Warhammer 40k Warhammer Fantasy line. And I've been working on a lot of the wings the first couple episodes. And then last time I started working on his leg down here. And today I'm going to finish up with the foot. And I think we'll deal with a little bit with the claws. And then from there I may do some more of his gold jewelry. In the meantime, off camera, I just kind of started working some more on the underside of the wings, painting them up just like the gradient effect I got going on here in the back. And of course, if you want to see this gradient effect, that's episode 3, which hopefully by the time, I would like to say, will be up on YouTube, but I'm cranking these live streams out a lot faster. I can sit down, do a little bit of editing, rendering, and put them up on YouTube. So, okay, but anyway. If you're watching it live here in the chat room, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, not only about what I'm doing with the painting process, but if you want to ask anything about the tabletop game industry, you're more than welcome to go ahead. I do run a tabletop game company, so I do have some insight in that matter. And if you are over on YouTube watching this sometime after it gets posted, feel free to post any comments in there on topics you want to talk about. Just keep in mind that, like I said, I'm pretty far behind. I think this is like episode 6, and I think only episode 2 is on YouTube right now. So I am a little bit behind in posting that, so it may take me a few episodes to answer your question or comment on your topic, but feel free to post it there. Alright, and the subtopic for tonight, instead of just painting Kairos Fateweaver, is I am going to be going back through the old listing of episodes of the Tabletop BattleField. There's still, most of them are still available on the website over at tabletopbattlefield.com. And it'd be fun to go through and just kind of comment on a whole bunch of the reviews I did years ago and kind of see what happened in those games. So talk a little bit about, are we still playing them, and things like that. So let's get the painting process up and going here, and then I'll dive into talking about some of the games reviewed years and years ago, because it's been 10 years since I launched the Tabletop BattleField with Kyle, and then Ryan, who joined us shortly afterwards. I literally just dragged him out of his room one day, and he had no idea what was going on, but we'll talk about that story some other time. Alright, so I'm going to be working here on the foot. Now, I've already coated the leg in a couple layers of Army Painter's, here it is, no, that's a gold color. I can't find the paint color. It's Army, there it is, it's hiding over here. So, the leg was initially covered in several thin coats of Army Painter's Desert Yellow, and then I did some dry brushing with a mixture of linen white to give it some highlights. So what I want to do is work on the scales on the toes, and you can see I've already got a little bit of that done over here on the other foot. And it's going to be very similar to how I did the scales on the leg here. We're just going to do some oak brown and then some orange brown highlights, and then we're going to work with some washes to bring out some of the details. And I actually got to go back in here to work on some washes with these scales too, or sorry, shades. We'll deal with that in a little bit. So first, I'm just going to take some oak brown, which is Army Painter color here, and I'm going to use that to kind of cover over some of the scales that are on the foot of Kairos Fateweaver. Alright, and for this process, I'm bringing out my, oh dear, just dropped my nice expensive Winsor Newton Series 7 brush. But for this first part, I'm going to be bringing out the GW Artificial Layer Extra Small brush. And just taking a little bit of water, thinning down the oak brown, and then I'm going to just paint over the scales on his toes. So we dive back into the archives of the Tabletop BattleField. Oops, I brushed my microphone, sorry about that. So back in the archives here, my first review episode was, I think, episode number 6. At this point, let's see, we had Kyle had obviously been on the show. Graham had been on the show. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. Ryan's first episode was episode 8, which has since been removed from the archives, has been expunged for various reasons. But this episode was just me talking. This is back when I'm still figuring out this whole podcasting thing and internet streaming, and back when no one really knew what the heck was going on. It's been that long. And the review episode covered 3 games. I was talking about Heroescape, Star Wars Miniatures, and Babylon 5, A Call to Arms. So let's start in order there. Heroescape. So where is that game today? Well, that game's kind of dead. Officially, right? It's created by Hasbro. Hasbro eventually shoveled it off to Wizards of the Coast, and shortly after that happened, the game just got canceled, I think. I'm not sure if it's like, because sometimes games don't get canceled, they get on infinite suspension or some weird bullcrap like that, but it's effectively canceled. It's been out of production for a long time. And when I say dead, it's dead in the sense that, it's not officially supported by the company anymore. It's still got a very ravenous fan base. I'm sure Ryan will tell all about that with his Tales of Valhalla thing. So it's not like it's dead as in no one plays it. It's just dead that it's, not easily available for purchase. Plenty of stuff is on eBay. Some of the more common stuff is cheap. Some of the rare stuff is stupidly expensive. But, that's where you have to go if you want to get some things these days, which, isn't really good long term for a game once a game company cancels it, but it happens. As for the game itself, obviously Ryan loved it. I enjoy playing it. I don't take it super seriously. No, that's lying. I take every game seriously. I'm over competitive. But, it shouldn't be taken terribly serious, but it definitely can be a fun little game to play. And again, it's very flexible. A lot of crazy stuff goes on in it, so I can see why it's very popular, and it's definitely still very popular to this day. All right, next here we're going to start mixing in some Troll Slayer Orange into the Oak Brown, and that is going to be used to highlight the scales I just put on there. I actually just very recently played Heroescape a few weeks ago. I was over at my friend's house. He has a couple sons I think the one I was playing with is 13. So it was a good first introduction war game, to him, and he had a lot of fun playing. The kid did. So it's just a silly little thing to play, but it was definitely a lot of fun. So it's still definitely a game I pull out every now and then. I have most of my collection here at my apartment. I don't know if everything's here, but I have most of my stuff here, so I can play it more or less whenever I want to. And it is one of the games that definitely had a lot of staying power on the tabletop battlefield. It came up a few more times, and Orion and I did an unboxing of Morrow, of Heroes of the... whatever it was called. Swarm of the Morrow. I was going to say Heroes of the Swarm. That's some weird hybrid of Blizzard and other crap. Now, so it was... we did that unboxing of the Swarm of Morrow, and I know we did a review of the Underdark, which was after Wizards of the Coast took over, and it was like the Dungeons and Dragons Drow set. Let's see, and that was there's probably some other scattering stuff in there. We might have talked about we talked about special characters. I know I brought my Tau Firewarriors in there, and that video I did on how to actually make custom Heroescape cards, man, that video was just crazy on YouTube. It's by above and beyond. I think it's by far the single most viewed YouTube on my Rock Robotics channel, like just some stupid amount of views. So that was a very good video on my part, and people still watch it this day. Every now and then I get comments on it. How does this work? It's like, I don't know, that was 10 years ago. The game's changed a little bit in 10 years, and I use Photoshop now anyway. So so that's fantastic. So the other games that were reviewed on that episode, and now it was Babylon 5, A Call to Arms. This was a game that actually got me into Babylon 5. I had never watched the show when it first came out, years ago in the 90s. I know Kyle was a huge fan of Babylon 5. So I should say, I know I watched a few episodes with him, so it wasn't a, completely never watched it. I know he definitely showed me some episodes. So he was very familiar with it. But it was really that miniatures game that got me into the Babylon 5 universe, and I eventually went on and bought all the seasons. They're actually the only television show I've ever gone on to buy all the seasons is Babylon 5, And I do have those here in my apartment, so could watch those whenever I want. They're sitting over on my toy shelf that sometimes shows up in the background of some of my YouTube videos. They're not anymore because they're reruns in my apartment, but that's a different topic altogether. But yeah, but as for the game, it's a fairly solid, pretty typical space combat game. You know, there's the cold Navy in space kind of a feel to it. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, you'd probably enjoy it. There really wasn't... I mean, I thought fighters were not terribly well balanced. They seemed like they're pretty weak, but maybe that was my experience. It had a very robust, very detailed campaign system you could play. They had all the different factions from the the show, and I think nearly every ship from the show. It's a great series of phrases that can lead to some curse words. Every ship from the show was pretty much available in there. And I know I had a bunch of the miniatures. They're pretty cool miniatures. They're nice, big, hulking pewter things back in the day. So I mean, it was a very fun little game to play. I enjoyed it, even if I didn't play it a lot, but I did definitely get some time in playing it. The game itself, so there's two aspects to it, right? There's a Call to Arms rule set, which Mongoose owned, and then of course is the Babylon 5 intellectual property. The game itself made it to a second edition before something happened and the license got pulled. I don't know the details behind that. That's one of those wonderful, mysterious stories. Probably not mysterious stories of the tabletop game industry. It's not quite the unseen disaster pit. But it's something where, like, yeah, I don't know what happened. And I don't really know in that case if those details of what happened there were actually publicly available. Oftentimes, court cases can get sealed, and it may not even gone to court. It may just have been they said, we're not going to renew the license. That happens. But the Babylon 5 version of it did eventually go away. And now what I'm working on here is whoops, oh crud. Okay, wipe that off. I got some more of the oak brown back on my brush, and there's lots of just little tiny details here. I'm gonna paint those brown with a little bit of orange highlight, just like we did the other scales. So some point after second edition got released of Babylon 5 and Call to Arms, the license got pulled and the Babylon 5 version went away. Eventually, there's two more variations of the Call to Arms rule set. One was, oh geez, I don't remember what the... There's one that had tiny little ships. I'd never heard of the sci-fi franchise. It was one of those smaller sci-fi franchises, I believe. It wasn't, a big thing. There's also one that was the classic series of Star Trek. So it was the 1960s series. They did a Call to Arms variation of that as well, I believe. And I think there was even, Mongoose had made a World War II rule set that was more or less Call to Arms. Because Call to Arms was, cold navies. It was basically naval combat. I don't remember. I want to say Victory at Sea sounds right, but I could be wrong on that one. So even though the Babylon 5 system, the Babylon 5 version didn't carry on, Call to Arms definitely kept sticking around. I have no idea actually what Mongoose is up to these days. I couldn't tell you what they do. I'm not sure what games they make. Space Combat has really been taken over, of course, by Fantasy Flight with Armada, and then Firestorm Armada, and there's a Drop Fleet Commander. That sounds about right. And then Halo Fleet Battles. So there's a lot of other games. I mean, Call to Arms is not one of the big ones. I'm not sure if it's even still available or if Mongoose is even still around. I should get my phone out and look to see what happened to Mongoose Publishing. I'm kind of curious now. That's the wrong foot. That's my old foot. I was painting the wrong foot there for a minute. But then the third game I reviewed that episode, I'll look in the Mongoose here in a minute. The third game we reviewed, which is me, there's no one on the episode, was Star Wars Miniatures by... That was Wizard of the Coast, I think. That was the random booster one. Collectible Miniatures. I am so glad collectible miniature games have died. HeroClix is still around. That game ain't going anywhere anytime soon. But for the most part, that fad is long gone. I mean, I am so glad for it. I just despise collectible miniatures games. it's not that the games are fundamentally wrong with the games. They were just, I just didn't like the whole, here's $10, maybe you'll get some figures you want, and then you end up with a bunch of crap you never use, and then it's not worth anything on eBay, and it just, ugh. So that was Star Wars Miniatures. Yeah, let's not talk about that game. If you really want to go see what my opinion was back then, you can go see it. That game is long gone. Oh, Fantasy Flight. I don't think Wizards of the Coast has any. I know Fantasy Flight obviously has, what's his face, the Descent variation. I'm trying to think what it's called. It basically uses the Descent. We played through the campaign. I played through the campaign of it. But it's Descent First Edition, Star Wars. There's a Hoth set out now. My mind is totally blanking. But there's that Star Wars board game. Rebellion? No, not Rebellion. Rebel Strike. Man. I'm sure anyone who's out there watching is screaming at me. It's called this. Star Wars. I don't know. Anyway, there's a Star Wars board game. Fantasy Flight's got the license. It's got a competitive version to it. I've never played that. I've only played the cooperative campaign. It's alright. It definitely got pretty hard for the Imperial player. It seems like we could just, the Rebel guys could just tear through everybody. And even though we basically lost the last mission, the campaign just ended a certain way. It's like, this is lame. But, you know, it's not a bad game. It'd be kind of nice if they switched over the Descent 2nd Edition rule set for it. I like that a little bit better when I was playing Descent 2nd Edition. But that game, the original Star Wars miniatures game, that's long gone, as is other ones before it, because the license just keeps getting transferred around for one reason or another. And Fantasy Flight's obviously got it right now. They've been cranking out not only that, but of course X-Wing and then Armada. So they've really been milking that Star Wars license for a while. They got some new dice games out. So that game, in terms of me playing that game, it never went very far, and I ended up selling all my miniatures to some guy at a convention for like $10. So got like $100 of miniatures for like $10. I'm like, get rid of this crap. I don't want it anymore. Let's see here. So I'm laying the paint. Let me go ahead and apply some washes to the foot, because the next step now is to apply some of the Seraphim Sepia. I'm going to move my microphone up just a tiny bit so I don't keep bumping in my head. I'm going to take some of the Seraphim Sepia wash, and I'm going to wash, or shade, and I'm going to put it over the foot and let that dry for a minute. And while it's doing that, I'll look up to see whatever happened to Mongoose Publishing. I don't know if they're still around, actually. So I'm using the Winsor Newton Series 7 brush here, and I'm flipping over my Kaladeji miniatures. Let's fix that there. So I'm just going to go take this Seraphim Sepia, and in pretty heavy quantities, I'm just going to run it over the foot. I'm just trying to coat this thing, give it, you know, that if, you know, I don't know, whatever, the shady look that you get, the shady look. My brain not working well tonight. I still can't think of that Star Wars game. It's like, it's Strike, Star Wars, ugh. Okay, I'll just let that heavy amount of wash just kind of set in there for a little bit. Let me look at what happened to Mongoose Publishing, and then I'll go use some other shades to highlight or just kind of bring out some of the details in the leg scales that we painted up back in the previous episode. I think that was on Monday. Let me slide back to this camera for a minute. Mongoose Publishing, eh? Whatever happened to those guys? Oh, nope, don't do that, don't do that. Here we go. Mongoose Publishing. Oh, they're still around. I guess they do the Traveler RPG. I don't really play role-playing games very much. That's probably why I don't quite recognize their name. Let's see about miniatures. What do they do these days? They've got some naval miniatures. That probably goes with that Yeah, they looks like their miniature section looks to be a World War II era naval ships. I see a lot of 43, 39 ships. What are these here? And there's something else. Swordfish, Supermarine Walrus. I don't know what those are. So yeah, that's probably why I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to them. It looks to be mostly doing historical stuff these days. Yeah, Victory at Sea. They made it into a PC game. What do you know? Yeah, Victory at Sea was their rule set where they took the Call to Arms rules, or Victory at Sea might have been first and they adapted to Call to Arms, but they're very similar sets, whereas naval combat versus space combat and things like that. Alright, let's dive back into working on Kairos here, and I think the next review wasn't for a few episodes. Let's see, placeholder, random mech warrior. There's a lot of mech warrior stuff earlier in the day. Avenger carrier and trees for mech warrior. What was the Avenger carrier? I have no idea. Avenger class carrier. Oh, that was a Babylon 5. I was painting something. It's one of the ships in Babylon 5. Okay. Oh, episode 14, Star Wars Pocket Model. Okay, we'll talk about that one here in a moment. So here's what I'm going to do to bring out some of the scales that are running up his leg here. I'm working this time with the Citadel's non-oil shade. This is not the gloss one. This is the normal one. It's very important that this is not the gloss one. And I'm going to be taking the Artificer extra small brush and just using it almost like a pen. I want to very carefully just run a small amount of this non-oil shade along the edge of each of these scales. So I don't really want it on the scales. I'm just trying to bring out the edge of the scales. So Star Wars Pocket Model. This was, like I said, episode 18 of, or episode 14 of season 1. Star Wars Pocket Model is a weird thing. It was kind of almost like a collectible card game that was kind of disguised as a miniatures game. Because there was obviously a collectible card element to it. You had a deck of cards which you could use to buff up your ships in battle. There were they could serve as like objectives you had to destroy, but at the same time you built a fleet of these pocket model ships. And pocket model, I think that was probably a trademark term that they were using, but they were not miniatures in the traditional sense, where they weren't plastic injection molding or pewter or resin or anything like that. What they were was styrene, like the credit card material, where that you would slide together at right angles, and you'd build little Star Wars ships. They had X-wings, A-wings, the frigates, the Star Destroyers. They had everybody. It was kind of different. It's like I don't know if I really like the miniatures. You know, looking at me here painting up Kairos Fateweaver. I obviously have an interest in the more real, beautiful miniatures, not the weird kind of proxy miniature things. So I don't think I was a big fan of that aspect of it. The gameplay was just weird. It was just very... oh my goodness. I mean, the WizKids went through a weird time period there. Of course, I was not a particular fan of WizKids, but I was pretty vocal about that back in the day. Because I kind of felt they were just really cranking games out left and right and see what would stick. And none of the games, I didn't think they were terribly well thought out. I don't know how well Star Wars Pocket Model did. They released a number of sets. But there was like there's 3 combat zones to the board. You can move your ships between the 3 combat zones. Everything was 2d6 based for combat. And like 5 ships costed 1 star to 5 star, and you built so many, you built up like 30 stars. So there's a point system going on there, but I almost felt like a 5-star ship was usually worth more than 5 1-star ships. So was just, I never quite, and I just didn't quite get the whole balance of the game. Maybe, I don't know if that was just my misunderstanding or if there really was something seriously wrong with it. I'm not sure. When we did those reviews back in the day, we played them as much as we could, but you really can't get a full grasp of the game in a couple play sessions. You really need, half a dozen times to play it, and that's just not practical to do. Especially if you're trying to get a game that came out that, you're trying to review a game that just came out, you want to ride the popularity of it. So, that was a weird one. I don't know how long that one lasted. I ended up selling that stuff on eBay. I got like $20 for all my ships, and I was happy with that. So that was a game that never lasted much longer than the review episode. I know Kyle just ripped it apart. There was some weird mechanic it had with, like, when a frigate would go broadside with like a Star Destroyer, it couldn't do it, and it was Kyle in total crazy rant mode that he would do every now and then. So that was not a particularly well-liked game on our part. Okay, well, that's looking pretty good there for the foot, some of the little scales on there. I'm going to start working on the claws. I'm going to start working on my other foot back here, and then I'll jump over here with the claws. And in a moment, I'll dig up what the next review in line was, and I'll see, I don't remember what it was. It might have been Halo Action Clicks. Action Clicks. That was another one of those WizKid games. I have no idea what was going on inside WizKids then. We'll never know what, but they were releasing just tons of games, and none of them really stuck. They had HeroClix is obviously the one WizKids game that's just been around forever. It's been really successful even to this day. I don't know who. I think actually the new WizKids took it over, did they? But anyway, I'm using my linen white. So this is my off-color white here from the Reaper Master series, and I'm just gonna paint up each of the claws. Now there's also four other little bone-like, claw-like things on his foot. It's not just the 3 claws in front, but there's a little bony thing right here behind the middle claw. There's one above the ankle, one on the back, right above the back claw, and of course the back talon itself. This is just the artificial layer brush, and I'm not using a pure white color just because bone. Actually, I don't know if bone's pure white or not, to be honest with you, but Demon Bone isn't. I can assure you that Demon Bone is not pure white. Don't ask me how I know that. And this particular white is often a color that you want to thin down because it does a very good job of showing brush strokes. But this particular linen white, if you thin it down, it's really gets thinned down. So I am not actually thinning down the linen white this time as I paint up the claws here. And let me bring on my phone, and let's see, what was the next game we reviewed? I think it might have been Halo Action Clicks. One of the things I'll talk about that when I get through this whole thing. This will be like possibly about a 4 or 5 different episode, things that keep diving back through all these very old games. Solaris, Interview with the Warriors of Arendor. Yes, Season 1, Episode 20. That was our next review, because it was otherwise Fighting Out Solaris style. That was before Solaris came out. I wonder what that one was about. Maybe, we might have been talking about the alternative third-party Solaris rules in episode. That was a fun little system they had. But Halo Action Clicks. So this was released to coincide with Halo 3, I believe. Yes, because it was well after Halo 2. It was right around the time Halo 3 came out. I remember we were drinking the Game Fuel, Mountain Dew Game Fuel on the end episode, because that was also something that was released, and I just, I don't remember what that even tasted like. But I don't really like Mountain Dew, so I probably didn't really like it that much. But I really don't remember. You have to go watch the episode to find out. So Halo Action Clicks was a different style of miniatures game. It definitely borrowed some aspects of, it was obviously click styles. So as your guys took damage, they had a little dial on them. You would turn that around to, and that would decrease their abilities. I'm still bumping into my microphone. Sorry, guys. So then they would turn around. You turn the dial around. That would reduce their abilities. Their defense. They're easier to hit. They were less accurate. They put out less damage. Things like that. It didn't really have a whole lot to do with HeroClix. It was definitely not compatible with HeroClix. It was also not compatible with other Action Clicks things, I believe. I think there was a Batman action. Maybe not. I might be making that up. Don't actually quote me on that one. But it was played on a board with squares. I remember the board was really dark and it's very difficult to see where the walls were. I remember sitting down and using whiteout or something to trace the walls on the maps. I couldn't even see where the little maps, the walls were on the map sheets. The map sheets were all folded up. They just wouldn't lay flat because they were stuck in the boosters folded up. There were just so many little things wrong with that game. The figures weren't bad. They were pre-painted miniatures. They looked like what they're supposed to look like. You had a whole bunch of Spartan soldiers, red Spartan soldiers, blue Spartan soldiers, so you differentiate them. Of course, the Chief was in there in about 7 different poses. There was a Cortana miniature. You had some Flood, and you had plenty of Covenant. Now, what made the game a little bit unique compared to other tabletop miniatures games is its goal was to try to recreate the feel of Halo multiplayer. So it wasn't like you were playing a military battle like you would see in nearly every other game system around. You were playing a game of Halo. When guys got killed, I believe they respawned. There's respawn points and there's upgrade. I don't remember if there was upgrades around. There were rules to capture the flag. I know that for sure. But it just was a very simplistic game. You moved around, you rolled 2d6 to compare, hit value, your attack value plus 2d6 if it was greater than or equal to target's defense. You did damage. There were some special powers that affected how the guys interacted with each other, but it was mostly running around rolling dice. I don't recall there being a whole lot of strategy to it. So there wasn't much longevity to the game, and I don't even know how long the game even lasted. I don't think even an expansion came out for it. Well, there was a Warthog expansion, I got that. There was a Banshee, and eventually they did release a Giant Scarab, so there were some expansions for it. But I don't think there's ever a second set. There's never, it never lasted long enough for Halo 4, obviously, or Halo Reach, or ODST, any of that kind of stuff. And in the end, I don't know if we ever played the game past the review period, because I don't think we really liked that one that much. I still have the miniatures, though, but they're not here in my apartment. I got them shoved in a box in my parents' house somewhere. But I still have the miniatures. I had a plan at some point. I wanted to, create an actual good Halo miniatures game. I was going to rewrite some rules, make it feel more like the actual video game, the campaign video game, not the multiplayer aspect of the game the WizKids game tried to capture. I never did that, though. I know very recently Spartan Games released Halo Ground Battle. I have not played that yet. I'm interested in trying it. And I don't know how that one's doing, but I know I remember... Oh, crud. My finger slipped. That's alright, whatever, I don't care. So now I'm moving on to the other foot, painting up the claws. Same thing as using the linen white here, paint up the claws. But I would like to try, I know the the Pelican. The Pelican dropship miniature for the Halo Ground Battle game. Holy crap, that thing looks awesome. I've loved the Pelican for Halo. I want to get that miniature just to paint it up. Ooh. Now, if only I did a series where I sat down and I live streamed the painting of miniatures and I rambled on for an hour at a time. Huh. Maybe I could justify buying the Halo Pelican. Maybe I might just do that. I'll see if I can get it from the local store here. But I'm I'm going to be painting up Kairos here for a while to come. But that's about all I got to say in Halo Action Clicks. There wasn't a lot to the game, and I don't even know. Like I said, still got the miniatures. I don't know if I got the rule book or the map sheets. I don't know if I can even play the game anymore. But I did like the miniatures. I did enjoy the miniatures. They're very nice little Halo figures, so I kept those. What was next? So we're at Season 1, Episode 20. At some point at the end of the season here, we get to, yes, let's see, so 21, Customizing Halo Action Clicks. I don't even remember what that was about. Episode 2 was our first look at Heroescape Swarm of the Morrow. So that was that was a fun, there's some stories behind that one. But that'd be fun just to set when Ryan, I can have Ryan jump on one of these nights with me here, and we'll just talk random tabletop Battlefield stories. I think there's some hilarious stories we can tell. I can tell you all about that one where I almost ran a kid over in that one. I didn't run over. I almost run over a kid with a car. What happened was that was the episode of Swarm of the Morrow. Okay, I'm actually gonna not even. I didn't almost run a kid over. I didn't almost kill somebody. I said that phrase wrong. I really said that phrase wrong. Next time when I get Ryan on the show here to talk as I'm painting stuff up, I will tell that story because it's really funny. I don't think Ryan ever heard that aspect of the story. So I will save that one for later. So you have to watch future episodes of Painting Kairos Fateweaver to hear the hilarious story of what I was just talking about. That didn't actually involve me almost running over a kid. Because no, I did not almost run over a kid. I swear, I did not actually almost run over a kid with a car. That's taking things way out of context. Never actually done that. I've almost been run over by a car on multiple occasions. A few more than I would like, and there's reasons for that. But anyway, let's see here. Chaos and the Apocalypse of Warhammer 40k. That must have been right around the time they released Warhammer 40,000 Apocalypse. But then episode 20... There's no episode 24. Huh. I'm just looking at the list of the episodes of Tabletop Battlefield. There's no Season 1, Episode 24. I wonder why that is. Even the episodes that got taken out had placeholders put in there. I don't know, some sort of weird, crazy conspiracy. I'm sure it's what it is. Some part of my evil plan to take over the world that involved removing Episode 24. But I can tell you, Episode 25 had 2 parts to it. And it was, as they called, the epic tale that was our review of StarCraft the board game. StarCraft the board game was Fantasy Flight, one of their super big box games. It was $100, and I remember when there was something about it that ticked off the local game store. I went to order it from them, and I put a pre-order. I didn't put a pre-order. I don't know if it was a pre-order or whatever, but they were looking at their inventory sheet on their computer, where they could order from their distributor. And however much this game cost for them to get from the distributor was abnormally high, and they were not happy about it. They had no problem me ordering it for them, but for whatever reason, apparently their markup on it was going to be pretty low, so they didn't probably weren't going to plan to stock on any regular basis. But the game itself was absolutely fantastic. I loved playing the StarCraft the board game. It did a very good job of capturing the feel of the video game. Eventually there was a Brood War. I can probably talk about that in a future episode. But it was a lot of fun. It was kind of like a more combat-focused mini Twilight Imperium. Everybody started off on a home planet, and you move from planet to planet, deploying your forces, capturing the planets, and, battling each other. It had a very interesting card-based system for combat, where you had a deck of cards, and each card had like a major value and a minor value on it. A major value would apply to certain unit types that are identified in the card. A minor value would apply to somebody else. So it effectively kind of represented not only ammunition per se for your units, but also but also things like technology. So when you've got some of the upgrades in StarCraft, you'd put them into your deck as cards. So your enhanced armor cards for like the battlecruiser or something like that, the Yamato gun for the battlecruiser was a card that you added 2 or 3 into this deck that eventually would come up and simulate their ability of having energy. It's a very clever little system. The only downside to it is that it resulted in battles that were very, I'm peeking again, that were very fixed per se, because you would not attack unless you were pretty certain you could win the fight, and then as soon as the battle began, you knew your cards, you knew the token attacker was probably going to overwhelm you. So there wasn't a whole lot of like surprise in how the combat was resolved, but it's a very neat approach they had to it. Okay, let's talk about making these claws a little more bony. They're pretty white at the moment. What I want to do, I am going to take some of the tiny amount of the oak brown. Once again, this is the Army Painter color, oak brown, and I'm going to mix it in with some of the linen white that's on my palette here. I'm going to go mostly linen white with a little bit of oak brown to get a shade, a little bit of a shade to the colors here. So you can hold it up. That's a color I'm working with right there. So maybe a little bit of a beige, maybe a little bit more brown. And I'm using the Citadel dry brush, which of course is the nice stiff bristles, really great for dry brushing. Because I'm going to gently dry brush this on the claws and try to get a little bit of texture going on the claws. That's something, gives me a little bit of something to work with. So I remember the StarCraft, the board game, I always played the Zerg, obviously, because I love the Zerg and they're awesome. And I really enjoyed it. Kyle and I really got into it very intensely. And some of the battles towards the end of the game, both Kyle and I would be standing over the tabletop. Because I don't know if they ever really showed a whole lot of us playing the games. When things got serious, Kyle and I would stand up. So you knew when things were getting serious, and Kyle and I were both standing over the battlefield, executing our tactics. That was a fun episode. It was the first one that I dumped up on YouTube. Of course, back then YouTube had 10-minute limits, 10-minute upload limits. So I had to break it down into 9 parts because it was 1.5 episodes. It was a 90-minute long review almost. And there was that one stone guy who thought we were absolutely hilarious because he got totally stoned and just laughed through the entire episode. Whatever happened to our stoner friend? Who knows? That was one of the funniest comments I've ever got on YouTube. Oh my goodness. Comments on YouTube. Go back to the old school. Okay, this is supposed to be a family show, so I can't just sit there and read those comments that I got years ago on YouTube. Oh my goodness, those got pretty vicious. But the StarCraft, the board game, we played it a few more times. I know I played with some other friends and took it around to some friends' house to play it because I enjoyed it so much. I haven't played it in years. I still have it. There was the one expansion, Brood War, which introduced, the units that were introduced eventually in StarCraft Brood War. Can't stay, but I want to throw a quick follow. Oh, thanks for the follow. I will certainly be painting up more Kairos Fateweaver. I got obviously a lot more to go on him, and I will be painting other miniatures in the future. But yes, thank you for following. So I still have the StarCraft, the board game. Like I said, I haven't played it much, but it is a lot of fun. Maybe someday I'll just have to pull it out again. I don't know where it is at the moment. Probably back in one of the boxes at my parents' house, but definitely a lot of fun. And that was the end of Season 1 in terms of the reviews that we did. I didn't do a lot of reviews back then. It was mostly MechWarrior content because we were still all figuring out what the heck we were doing. It wasn't until episode 12 of the Tabletop BattleField that we even had decent microphones. One of the episodes was episode 8 or 10, which is one that doesn't exist anymore. Just, oh my goodness, it was obnoxious hums. That was really the early days of me doing not live streaming. Live streaming didn't even exist back then. I'm not sure if Justin TV existed back then. I don't know when that started. But of course, Justin TV was the thing that eventually became Twitch that you guys are watching right now. But that was the early days of podcasting for me. And Season 2, I wonder what... It'd be fun to go back on the episode at the end of or the beginning of season 2 and see what awards we gave out. That was one thing that we did. We started doing very early on in the show, and one of the more popular aspects of Tabletop Battlefield was the crazy, silly awards that we gave out. Game of the year. I'm pretty sure StarCraft won Game of the Year because all the other games we reviewed we more or less didn't like. So I'm pretty sure that was StarCraft just took it hands down. I think next episode do live streaming. I'll go through season 2's reviews. I know War Machine was in there. I don't remember what the other games were reviewed in season 2 was. Lord of the Rings? I think Lord of the Rings was in there too. That might have been season 3. Axis and Allies showed up at some point with projectile vomiting jokes. Remember that episode? That's gonna be a fun Ryan episode when he's on here. When I bring him on the show to talk. We just, oh my goodness, the stories we have about Tabletop Battlefield are just ridiculous. I'm gonna try to get a little more variety in my claws. I'm bringing back out the Desert Yellow from Army Painter. I'm going to dry brush that on. I'm really just trying to give a little bit of not just pure white to the claws and try to stain them a little bit. And I think the final part's going to be some of the Seraphim Sepia, but I will probably do that here in just a few minutes. And I think once I'm done with the claws, I'll probably call it a night tonight. I just kind of I've also just ran out of my main topic I was talking about, which were following up in the reviews I did nearly 10 years ago, back when I started doing internet content on the first season of Tabletop Battlefield. That was just, wow, ancient times. Ancient times, but so much fun. That show was so much fun. A lot of work, but a lot of fun. But if you're watching here live and have any questions about what I'm doing, or if you have any questions about the tabletop game industry, feel free to ask away. I do run a tabletop game company, so I have some insight in that. And thank you for watching. Let's see here. What can I talk about for the last few minutes? How did the Tabletop Battlefield ever actually start? I'm trying to think of that story. I wonder how I convinced Kyle to get on camera and let me record him. Him and I just blabber on for 45 minutes about nonsensical MechWarrior Dark Age stuff. I have absolutely no idea how I convinced him to do that. I know he obviously enjoyed it. He came back for 4 years. No idea how the show ever started. I know podcasting wise, that was back in the days of Dignation, and then I also was familiar with the Twit network. Dignation, which is long gone. Twit network, which I guess is still going good. I don't really watch any of their content anymore. But that was back then. There were 3 other tabletop wargame podcasts at the time. Fell Calls, that was War Machine. They went for about 100 episodes. They were one of the first. Was there something called the Drop Podcast? They were a Games Workshop fan cast. I think they predated the Tabletop Battlefield. And the 4th one, it was more of a historical wargaming one. I don't remember what it was called. Oh, I'm going back to the Linen White, and I'm just going to dry brush some of that back over the claws to kind of dull down some of the dry brushing I just did. That looks cool. I like that there. And just kind of blend in some of the layers a little bit ago, and that gives it a nice little bleached bone look. I like that. That looks really cool. And then, of course, after the Tabletop Battlefield, you got Meeples and Miniatures. They started at a very similar time. I think we made it beat them by about 2 weeks. And then a year later, you got the Mini Wargaming guys. They started up absolutely nothing like what they are today, but they started up doing, recording content and posting stuff on YouTube and running a store. 40K Radio showed up sometime afterwards. There was Podhammer. I think that was a Australian-based Warhammer Fantasy podcast. it just grew from there. Back in the early days of tabletop wargaming podcasts, I don't think any of us knew what we were doing. None of us were from the production, from like a television production or radio production standpoint. So we were just making crap up and see what happened. I was learning audio gear on the fly. Even this day, I'm still learning how to even do these things. There's an episode of season 4, I don't remember what it is, where we actually had a professional radio DJ run our audio equipment. It was the same audio equipment that we'd used for the last previous year, just cheap crap. But whatever that guy did, it was above and beyond the best sounding episode in the tabletop Battlefield history. I don't know what he did or how he made but there was no hissing, no buzzing, nothing. He figured out the perfect settings and knew how to make it all work, and it was just stunningly beautiful. I spent hours trying to figure out what he did, trying all sorts of different settings on my soundboard. I can never duplicate it. So that guy, holy crap, that guy was incredible, what he could do with cheap, crappy equipment. Alright, well there's our claws up to this point here. I'm just about done with live streaming tonight. So I think the last thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of Seraphim Sepia on those. And just a tiny small amount, just enough to give a little bit of darkness in the creases and bring out some of that detail a little bit. So let's use the Artificer XS brush, extra small brush. Here's our Seraphim Sepia. And what I'm gonna do is just get a very, very thin amount. And just go over each of the claws with this very thin amount. And that just gives it a little bit of a tan coating. And maybe you can get a tiny bit more and put it in, and very carefully put it in some of the creases, but you don't want to spread too much over it, because what actually will happen is if you have too much of this Seraphim Sepia on these claws, the color is going to match his toe, the rest of his skin, and that's obviously not what you're going for. That's looking pretty good there. I'm liking that. Prior to the tabletop Battlefield, what did I do? I had very early on, I mean, when was 2002? 2002. This is before the concept of podcasting existed, before the idea that you could actually be a successful broadcaster on the internet, before people even thought about this. I had ran a 6-episode series where I had posted these videos of a robotic combat event I went to, and that's all it was. And I think to this day, if there's anything that kind of mistakes that I made that frustrated me, this is one of them. That I did not realize that the internet could be a perfectly viable broadcasting platform. Otherwise, who knows what I might have gone on to do. Because this is 2002 where I was producing this video. This is well before any of the major podcast networks came up. I don't know if RSS was even created yet. I don't know what year that showed up. So I look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have seen that, but you live and learn, and you move on with how things go. And here I am now, 15 years later, painting Warhammer figures on the internet. Yep, that's how things go. Alright. I'm trying to say, that's the look I want. I mean, it does give them a little... Yeah, I think I'll stick with that. What I'm probably going to do then, again, is go back with some more linen white shade, just to return some of the white color to the bone. because this does blend in the claws a fair amount to his legs, which I don't want. But at the same point, I don't really want them to be bleached white either. It's a weird balance I'm trying to strike here, because I don't want them to be bleached white, but I don't want them to be too brown where they look like the rest of his legs. It's like, that's kind of an awkward position. Alright, let's put a little bit more of the Seraphim Sepia on here, and then I'll do a little more dry brushing, and we'll call it a night for the night. Alright, a little bit more right in there. A little bit down there, a little bit down there. I think we need a tiny bit more on this middle bone. Okay, that'll work. So let me go dry brush some more of the linen white on there just to bring back a little bit of white, and I will call it a night. Alright, linen white's coming out. Put a little bit of that down on the palette over here. Let's get out our dry brush. Wipe most of the color off. And then just very gently dry brush. Just to bring back a little bit of that bleached white color look. I don't really have any more good stories to tell tonight. Talked a lot about the reviews. So I don't know. I'll think of something for next time. If Ryan jumps on here, we'll definitely share some fun tabletop Battlefield stories. There's some just, oh my goodness. I'm sure there's just some crazy, hilarious incidents that we got ourselves into over the years. If not, I'm sure we'll figure out something to talk about. We can go on for hours just telling hilarious stories about each other. I've known Ryan for goodness. How long have I known Ryan for? I've known Kyle as my co-host for how old am I? 25 years maybe, somewhere in that range. So I've known Kyle for about 25 years. Ryan, I've known him for close to 15. And I think most of the other people that I had on the show, Graham I met in college, so I've known him. I haven't seen him in years, but I met him, had to be probably about 15 years ago also. So I met him maybe like 13 years ago. Seeing that he was on 10 years ago on the show, it's like, oh my goodness. It's just mind-blowing to me when I talk about it as 10 years since the Tabletop Battlefield launched. So anyway, I'm taking more white dry brushing, and what I want to do is just get a very bright white highlight in the top of these claws. And then that'll be good. You could always try to dry brush some red on them, make it look like he killed somebody, because, you know, they're demons, they do that. But I don't think I'm going to do that this time. So I'm just using some more dry brushing to make the very tips of the claws be white. Because everyone else that was on the show, Jerry, Brent, I all met them because of the show. John Albers, he worked for Games Workshop, and he came on the show the one time after he no longer worked for them. Who else is on there? Owen. How did I know Owen? Owen I knew from my MechWarrior days. I stumbled across him. I forgot how I ended up. Because I knew him back from when we played MechWarrior Dark Age. And competitively up at Imagination Unlimited? Yes, Imagination Unlimited was where we played. Keith never came on the show. He was the other guy I played with MechWarrior with back in college. If he ever shows up, maybe if he ever comes back in town, that'd be kind of fun to get to bring him on this one of these live streams, his chat for a while. He plays 40k now. At least he's familiar with it. He's talking about cosplaying some Imperial Guard players, so I assume he knows something or two about it. But how did I ever meet Owen again? I'm not sure how I met him again. Because it was, 5 years since I played competitively in MechWarrior that I ended up actually recording the show. So I don't know. I'm not really sure how I ended up meeting the guy, re-meeting him. Probably ran into him at a game store or something. Who else is on the show? Andrew. How did I ever meet Andrew? I don't remember how I met Andrew. I met Andrew through Jerry and Friends. That's who it was. He played Warhammer with us. I haven't seen him in years either. Most of the hosts I've seen recently. But there's a few that people disappear and it's just what happens. So anyway, put a little more white back into the claws. I think they're looking pretty good. They're definitely got a bit of an awkwardy, off-white, textury look going on to them. So with that, I think I'm going to call tonight's live stream done. We got some good feat action going in Kairos. What I will probably do next time is I'm going to start working more on the skin color. So you're going to see a lot more of this shading and dry brushing that I did for his legs. We're going to do that all over his body, necks, arms, things like that, and just get a whole bunch of that base color down. And then you're going to see, obviously a lot more color show up on him. But with that, let's go ahead and close this show out. So once again, I'm Jason. Thank you for watching this live stream. If you have any questions or comments for me, you can feel free to leave them on the YouTube video of this link, wherever that on the YouTube video you're watching, if you've made it this far. And you can go ahead and drop a comment down there in a future episode of painting Kairos Fateweaver or whatever miniature I'm painting up. Maybe it'll be a pelican. It'd be kind of fun to get that pelican dropship and paint it up. So I might actually do that. Cause I don't. Probably by the time I'm done with him, I know the Primarch and Cypher are gonna be out. But that'd be kind of cool to stick a pelican in there and see what happens, and see if people like watching some non-Warhammer stuff. I don't know. It's an idea. So anyway, with that, once again, I'm Jason. Thank you for watching. I don't really have a schedule for these live streams, but Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is when I paint up my Legends of Kaladegia miniatures. And I think tomorrow, which would be February 16th, I'm going to be finishing up painting the Surikari Corona here. And then we'll be moving on to painting the Aragul Pale Fox, which should be out pretty shortly because I've got this hiding over here. I've been experimenting around with some retail packaging once again. Retail packaging is just the enemy of anyone who makes limited production run tabletop gaming. But there we go. So the Pale Fox should be out very shortly for ordering. And with that, once again, for the third time in like 2 minutes, I'm Jason. Thank you for watching and have a good night.